Great. So we are going to call to order our OregonServes Commission meeting for today, March 14th at 11:02 a.m. Hello, everyone, and happy Friday, happy almost weekend. We have a lot going on in our agenda today, so we are going to go ahead and get started just with a quick agenda review. And actually, if you want, in order to save time, you want to introduce yourself in the chat. Just who you are, how you've been, how long you've been serving, and if you have any special assignments or positions, roles that you serve in your leadership here on the commission or as staff. So,
So Heidi, it looks like we cannot send chats to the entire group. It
okay,
only goes to the admin.
okay.
I've
You
noticed that
don't
on the
have a
last few
drop down
meetings.
for everyone.
No, I've noticed it on the last couple of meetings. There's no option to send to anybody except the host.
Wow, good to know. Let me sort
Yeah,
out. But
I
can you see where I've posted the agenda? Do you see that stuff in the chat?
Mm-mm.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Okay, we'll work on that.
all right. Well, hello, everyone. A quick agenda review here. We are going, for sake of time, we're going to work with a consent agenda today. So we have our director's report within the consent agenda. We'll chat about that real briefly. And then we have report out from some leadership. Carrie and um, Daniel were able to attend the Ask convening in Washington, D.C. So a quick report out about that. And then we've invited public testimony. One of the things that we felt was really important in light of everything that's going on um, at the federal level and with funding and or their lack of and all the things. We've invited a couple of our service providers to provide public testimony today. In addition, we are have invited a couple of our own commission members to speak about some of what they're experiencing within their own programs and work as well. Invited testimony. So, and then we'll have some discussion after that. And then we'll close up with a few action items and upcoming events. And we will adjourn no later than 12:30 so you can get on with your day. So with that said, does anybody have questions about the agenda? Are you all able to access it okay? Okay, great. So approval of the previous meeting minutes from our previous meeting, which was held, was that in April? No, sorry, April's next month. Forgive me. Was that in February? Can I get a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as is from our last meeting.
Thank you, Sierra. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Patricia.
Thank you. And all those in favor of approval of the meeting minutes, just show of hands or an eye. Thank you. Minutes approved.
Heidi, could I just ask if people can now see the chat and be able to use the chat appropriately? If someone could test that for me. I believe I've fixed the settings. Okay, yeah. I'm seeing June and Greg say things. Is everybody else?
Happy Pi Day. Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
great. So I
Thank
think we've
you.
got that fixed. And hopefully, you're seeing that the agenda is actually attached to the first messages as well, if you need it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for doing that, Carrie. So on to commission members. Any news or announcements? This can be anything related to your work, upcoming events, things that you're doing, things of interest, news and announcements. Sierra, you had a big gala or fundraiser?
In September, and now I'm already working on the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, never ends.
Great.
I just tend to view that as the never-ending gala myself. It's always in some stage of happening.
I'll just say, just a reminder to everyone that National Volunteer Week is April 20th through 26th. So this year it's hitting on around Earth Day as well.
Oh, thank you for reminding us of that. That's very important. Having been a former volunteer coordinator, that was like a heavy week of work, as I know it might be for some of you as well. Okay. So we're going to move into our consent agenda. The only item we have there is our director's report, and that was attached, and it's also in base camp. And so I encourage you to please take a look through that. A lot of good and important information. Carrie has been very busy. Carrie's always very busy, but it's been extremely crazy busy in this world as of late. So thank you for your work, Carrie. The consent agenda, do we need a motional approval or any of that?
Yes, you would need
Yeah.
a motion
A
to
motion to approve the consent agenda. So I would
accept it.
or
I
accept
think.
the consent agenda. Greg, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Okay. Can I get a
I'm
second
stickler
to
for it.
accept that consent agenda?
I'll second it.
Oh,
Thank
go
you,
for it.
June, for the second. So Greg and June, thank you. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Show of hands. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, we're a little ahead of time, and I know Daniel's not with us yet, is he? And what we could do if we wanted to bounce around a little bit and wait for him. Greg is here. What are your thoughts, Carrie? Should we, or would you like to
I
report?
could really quickly share out on the leadership convening just to even context, kind of set up of what it is. And then if you want to move into, I think we just want to make sure we're wanted to give, because is Carrie on here?
No, I don't see Carrie.
She's not on here either. And so maybe give some time to see if she makes it in soon, because we wanted to give Greg and Carrie some time that's not part of the public comment period to kind of share what's going on in their world as representation from national directs and senior programs. So yeah, I can just do that and share a little bit about that. The leadership convening is an event that's hosted by our national association every year. So it's super fun to be able to get together with all the other commission directors and then an invited board or commission board chair or co-chair. And we all meet in DC, and the agenda includes just a lot of decisions. It includes like the Ask Board meeting and updates about the strategic plan and other initiatives from them. And then some parts where we might have like some trainers come in and whatnot. This year was a trainer about burnout, which was probably great timing, because it's been a lot lately, but so good to get a reminder to take care of yourself. And generally just a lot of discussion around some of the other initiatives going on and some policy recommendations. So we talked a lot about some research and data parts, sort of some of the work that we're all doing in the different committees and work groups around the workforce development piece. Just as a kind of sidebar about that, what that is, we've done such a good job of reminding everybody that AmeriCorps is not a job, that we were kind of getting left out, though, in some of those discussions around that it is actually a pathway for educational and career attainment. And so a lot of the workforce discussion is around, making sure AmeriCorps is part of that, and part of the WIOA discussions and so forth. So we had a lot of great discussion around that. We always have AmeriCorps leadership come in and share kind of what's going on in their world. And which was very busy this time around. And then we do congressional visits. This time we did visits. We didn't actually meet with anyone directly. We met with staffers for Bonamici and Merkley. Um, and fun fact, on the way home on Thursday night, every single person but like Bence was on that plane. We had Bynum and Chavez and and Wyden wasn't Merkley, Congresswoman Dexter. I mean, it was a packed
It was the, was it
important
the
VIP Oregon representatives plane. So I'm sorry.
Alaska flight from DCA?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very popular flight. So that was really funny. But yeah, it was very like really productive week. Daniel did come with, which was fun. That was his first time in DC, so I loved that because it's always fun, exploring with people. And I would say the big takeaways is just, we're gonna hear later from some programs that are going to talk about some invited testimony around kind of what's going on with their world in their world and any concerns or insights and impacts they want to share and let you all know as an entity that can discuss policy or maybe to talk about how you need to do more education or whatnot. Um, Let you all know kind of what's going on, how they might be impacted or their partners impacted by executive orders or potential funding, government shutdowns and funding freezes and things like that. Um, and that there's a lot going on around that. I've put some of that in my director's report. As you all know, Oregon is part of some of the lawsuits that are also occurring on a national level around some of these orders. And AmeriCorps is, of course, as an agency, caught in the middle of all that as well. So it was really good to have leadership come and kind of give their stance and perspective on kind of how they're responding to the things that they have to respond to as a federal agency. Kind of how they're, seeking to work with that as well as be, obviously like not have AmeriCorps be like a big target or, under fire and kind of, meet their responsibilities and also communicate that we believe we're all doing great, compliant, fantastic legal work. And so it was really good to hear from them and get their perspective and get some questions answered around that. And also just check in with them because I mean everyone is going through it in a little ways right now, right? And as a federal agency, there's a lot of things going on as far as deadlines for laying people off and reorganization plans, and waiting on federal appointees to or leadership, political appointees to be in place and so forth. So I think we had a lot of conversations about trying to just give each other grace under all of the pressure that we're all under during this time, but also, just communicate concerns and insights and whatnot. So that was really good to be able to come together like that. We had really great response from the staffers that we met with. Of course, shared, we don't have any budget control, so that is interesting. But always happy to hear about the great things that AmeriCorps is doing. We had and shared a lot of the education word data that I sent out to you all, which I think it was very cool to see. And we have some interest for some follow-up visits and I'm working on right now a visit to some programs from Congresswoman Dexter next month. So very productive visit. Hopefully I didn't do any spoilers to what Daniel wanted to share, but that's just a little bit of what was going on. And yeah. And it looks like Confluence just joined. That's the only one I've got to join.
Okay.
Newly joined. Still don't have Daniel or anyone else, but maybe it would still be a good time to go ahead and hand off to
Yeah.
Greg at the least, because you got about 10 minutes before if we stick to the 11:25 time.
And if we do have time toward the end, we can have Daniel speak a little bit about that experience. He had
Yeah.
some great things to share, but
I
yeah,
left quite a bit of time open just in case, because I didn't know how many people would accept the invited testimony. So we have quite a bit of time, and who knows, we might be able to end early today. And so yeah, I'll keep it in our notes to follow up. And I just want to quickly say that Daniel has just let us know he's running late, so you don't
yeah,
have to
yeah.
text him or anything. But I thank you.
That in mind, do we want to? So I know we asked Greg if he would be open to sharing a little bit about what you're experiencing right now, Greg, as a national direct and um, how things are for you and your programs and folks.
Yeah, can speak a little bit to that. Not surprisingly, it's been chaotic and uncertain. A little bit more context about us. We're a national direct that recruits right now anywhere from like 70 to 100 volunteers per year to serve with about 100 partners scattered throughout the Pacific Northwest. So a lot in Oregon, but we're also in Alaska, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. And for us, this is a recompete year. So we're in the third year of our fifth 3-year grant cycle. So we've been a national direct for 15 years. And every 3 years, we're in an uncertain boat as it is, not knowing what AmeriCorps' priorities would be and whether it fits with our own direction. And so, we were heading last summer and fall into that typical uncertainty. But the last 2 months have been, yeah, as others have referenced, chaotic to say the least. So, our immediate hurdles were trying to just wrap our heads around the executive orders. As many of you know, they're confusing. They're, in my opinion, sometimes poorly written and potentially illegal. So, we're just going week to week, oftentimes, and I feel so badly for AmeriCorps staff as well. They're just trying to do the same, understand what's going on and what their role is. And oftentimes, they're getting information simultaneously as us. And so, it's just been a week to week kind of stepping through, understanding everything. We had to go back in and kind of relook at our original application from 3 years ago to look at it through the lens of compliance with executive orders. And what we do with our grant is we draw down funds from it after we've spent them. So we, had some delays in the first couple of drawdowns as that process kind of got muddied a little bit. But so far, so good on getting reimbursed for those. So that's been good. But now our big attention is turning back towards that recompete application that we submitted in January. And so, what happens in Congress is of high interest to us. From a volunteer standpoint, we're seeing a greater sense of interest in our program compared to the last few years. And now we're just going to have to relook at what our options are from a funding standpoint should AmeriCorps slots continue to be decreased or funding go away altogether. The silver lining in that for me is it's never a bad thing to look around for what partnerships might exist out there in the world to match up what we're trying to do with what others are trying to do. It's daunting though, as a national director of 15 years. It's something that we've come to rely on and has allowed us to do some really amazing things in communities, and that's really in danger right now. So I don't know if there's questions or reactions to that, but in general, where we are.
Thank you for sharing and for enduring and persevering. And I'm curious, so you have submitted your reapplication. When will you find out?
Well, the original timeline and the typical timeline when we go through this process is like mid-April, they say. I'll be shocked if they're able to stick to that, given what's going on. But which makes it doubly hard because we have volunteers lined up for next year already. Our application process is pretty early, so our volunteers start in August. But we've been placing volunteers with matched agencies since February, and will continue to do that, really throughout May and June. So if we get unfavorable news on that front in any kind of way, we'll be sort of scrambling to figure things out.
Other folks have questions for Greg? And I assume you have some partner agencies. They understand where you're at right now and potentially pitching in if need be.
Yes, and thanks for bringing that up. That's another element, another layer of chaos because many of them rely on federal funding or whatnot. So, they're all in the same boat, trying to understand what's happening in terms of funding. So we've already had some of our partners say, hey, we're not going to be in a position to host a volunteer and AmeriCorps member next year. And that's disappointing. I anticipate that that could increase over the coming months, depending on how people view their own financial horizon. So, and for our members or potential members starting next year, a lot of them are drawn to us because of the living allowance or, the education award. And so if they're shifting on that front and fewer slots available or no slots available, we may see more chaotic movement there. So it's going to be a bumpy ride, I think, for the next 4 to 6 months.
Sure. And I know one thing that's been looming in my mind are, what are members saying, feeling? I mean, I can only imagine where some of that is, but are there ways in which we can respond? And I think we're always looking for how, as a commission, can we be mindful of our members and what they're experiencing, and how can we address that? Um, anyway, I'm putting it out there. You don't need to respond necessarily, but it's something that I think is important for us to consider. Carrie?
Heidi, I can add too, if it's helpful for context for others, and there's a little bit of this in my director's report, but in case people haven't had a chance to read that just yet, the the Fiscal Responsibility Act does put a cap on the appropriations, and then whether or not appropriations, come to the level that we want them to be, there would still be this cap. And so one of the things that is sort of an overarching concern is that with that cap and then this, the great situation that's occurring at the same time around that the stipend is getting raised, the minimum level for that is getting raised. Without getting more money, but needing to raise the stipend, that means you have less money to have as many members out there. So the expectation is potentially a 10 to 20% cut. So it could go anywhere from your typical 75,000 members serving nationally to like 45 or 50,000. So it's going to be very competitive. In the grant making world coming up. But so that's one of the things that is sort of looming overhead, in addition to obviously concerns around like continuing resolutions and potential zeroing out of budgets and so forth. And just another thing I'll mention, as I shared with Heidi earlier, when you see the charts that I've shared around the potential funding projections, while it looks like some things are not, it's not problematic, it's not zeroed out because it has funding in it. The issue here is that there's no funding proposed to be in the National Service Trust, which is like the bank account for the Ed Awards. And by statute, you are not allowed to enroll members if you don't have Ed Awards to give out. And so that is sort of like this kind of backdoor way to, that shuts that down, the program's down. And then finally, I would just share a little bit about, just for the background context, that we did just get notice that um, uh, pending, as long as there's no shutdown, which obviously could, like, any further interruptions could change this. It is expected that awards will probably be almost a month late than normal, out to programs. It would, especially with reduced capacity at the federal agency due to the layoffs and so forth, and the firings and this and that have happened at the federal level. It could be around 6 to 8 weeks for those reviews and awards to happen, meaning that at the earliest, when we submit at the earliest date that we're allowed, the June 13th, that it could potentially be August 1st before AmeriCorps awards. So our program staff is working on making sure to notify people of that. People will need to plan accordingly. It may, or for some it may not be a big deal. For others it may factor in, especially if maybe it's an education program or whatnot. So those are just some of the things that are sort of, again, some context that you might hear about a little bit later from programs, but is a little bit to what Greg was speaking to about just some of those unknowns or potential mitigating factors.
Thank you, Carrie. Sarah, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just had a question. Has there ever been any conversation about amending the Fiscal Responsibility Act to increase the cap on member service year expenses to address the issue that we're talking about? Has that ever been on
That
the
was a
table?
federal act. It came,
Right,
it's not only, it's applied to every federal
right,
agency. It's only in place for 2 years. It's 24, 25, 25, 26. I mean, my hope is nobody decides to extend it, but I don't think there's anything, and I don't think there's any incentive with the current administration to
right.
do that. But I don't know. I don't know more about that. Yeah, interesting thought. It'd be nice. Bad timing. Those things happening at the same time.
So I want to move us along in our agenda. I see both Carmen and I think Elizabeth, and maybe from Confluence here. We have invited um, our Oregon AmeriCorps partners for public testimony. And just as a reminder, this is not for us to answer questions or respond, but we really wanted to be able to hear. And maybe it's Adriana, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly, for us to just hear what the experiences are, similar to you, Greg, like what is happening now, just so we can have a better picture and know how to be able to respond eventually as a commission. So thank you for both of you for being here. Adriana, I see you were here first. I don't know if you want to provide testimony first or Carmen,
Oh,
either way.
hello. I'd appreciate if Carmen's available to go ahead and go first. I'm waiting for a pass off of my baby who's here with me now to someone
No
else.
worries, no worries. And Carmen, thank you for being here. Carmen comes to us from the Coalition for Racial and Educational Justice. It's a mouthful, like I have to read it whenever I say it. Formerly Campus Compact of Oregon. Thank you for being here, Carmen. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to be reading off of my screen, just a heads up.
Thank you.
So hello, commissioners. My name is Carmen Brune-Jennison. I am the executive director for Coalition for Racial and Educational Justice. The acronym is COURAGE, so it's a little less of a mouthful. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today about the impacts of the current administration on our programming and the communities that we serve and center. So we serve hundreds of students every year directly and thousands indirectly through our programs. And of course, we focus on educational equity for historically underserved communities. So that includes Black, Indigenous, and people of color, immigrants, migrants, and refugees, LGBTQ2SAI+ students, and students with disabilities, and of course, all intersections of those aforementioned identities. And then, of course, we support low-income people and incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students with a specific focus on women, and we serve all first-generation college students. So our approach addresses systemic inequities by considering race, class, gender, ability, and citizenship in our programming and our programmatic interventions. Recent federal funding uncertainties and administrative hostility towards DEIA initiatives with no clear language around what DEIA even is or how they define it and why it's prohibited has destabilized our programming and our partners programming, and of course our campus and K-12 partners programming. So it's had ripple effects, and it's been very harmful to the communities that we serve. This is not a partisan issue, and competency means treating everyone with dignity and using systems-aware and evidence-based practices of decision-making. That's really foundationally what equity is. The policies of the current administration, which are the antithesis of the Biden-Harris administration, have resulted in program closures for many of our partners, or people we're tangentially partnered with, particularly immigrant, migrant, and refugee serving entities, leading to the loss of vital services such as and of course in education. We've been hearing about a lot of cuts in education. So we've been hearing about losses of vital services such as just free lunch and special education programs. Government shutdowns and executive orders have disrupted services for vulnerable Oregonians, worsening existing crises in key areas, including education, housing, public safety, healthcare, and others. This is, particularly coming out of COVID-19. We're still cleaning up those messes. We're still addressing those issues. So we're dealing with a significant pileup right here, especially those of us addressing things like post-secondary access and chronic absenteeism. And the resulting chaos has really, people are suffering. People are not getting their healthcare services. They're not getting food. They're having issues with, utilities and housing. So this current political climate has created a collapse in essential support systems. Additionally, there is a culture, an environment of fear, fear for undocumented families, fear for Black and Brown folks who are experiencing, administration sanctioned racism in the workplace and at school. And we have received many many reports from LGBTQ, 2SAI plus communities, students, administrators, and they're facing hatred at work and at school, and there are not always guarantees that their campus or that they will have support on campus or at school when these things happen. And these sentiments are being reinforced by the current administration. So some really specific impacts of the current cuts and the destabilization of funding and funding streams. So disruption of essential services in key educational settings. As I mentioned, school lunch, I mentioned special education, I mentioned a pileup of COVID-19 related issues around chronic absenteeism. Many undocumented families have reported that they are fearful to send their children to school because they may be picked up by ICE. Students in higher ed are also fearful to go to school because they're afraid they'll be picked up by ICE. And then it's creating an instability in terms of just, community trust as well. We need to maintain some level of consistency in the chaos. As a nonprofit organization, we need to communicate. We don't always know what to communicate. We don't always know how the disruptions are going to impact our programming. And I think that the constant shifting around of priorities from the current administration and how that's impacting our funding streams and services is kind of it's had a really negative impact on the ecosystem between institutions, organizations, and community. So this is these are delicate relationships, and it's important that we are able to maintain transparency and consistency throughout. And that's been really challenging. And then, of course, just long-term planning. Everything from our AmeriCorps members don't know if their programs will be funded. Our sites don't know if they'll be able to continue to provide services. These things are happening so quickly and they're happening overnight. So the impacts are also creating the conditions for, we can't necessarily build new things or implement new things as quickly as we would like, or they need to be built or implemented, because our organization or a partner organization or entity may be facing very sudden funding loss. And we've heard about this at PPS, for example. There were very, very abrupt funding cuts and shockwaves, right, throughout the community, but also as far as our partnerships with the Portland public school systems, they were very disrupted. So organizations like ours are on the front lines addressing community needs and addressing access to education. Disruptions and systemic barriers disproportionately affect those we serve. And we urge the Commission to advocate for continued federal investment in programs that advance racial equity and racial and educational equity insofar as you are able, right? And of course, protect the civil rights of our students and communities. I think that's been another area of profound concern is the fact that our students and our community civil rights are just being eroded at so rapidly, and many of the things that we've been fighting for decades, right? They're being sort of rolled back. So I think that, in some, that's where we stand as an organization, is just wanting to be active collaborators with the Commission and urging you to stand with us and stand up for our students during this time of chaos. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you,
And
Carmen.
yeah.
Thank you for being here. And I know many of us are familiar with your organization and its different iterations. I just threw in the chat a link to your programs. I hope that's the correct link. Just so that we can be more familiar. But thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's important. Your work is important. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Um, I want to move over to Adriana next. If you are free, if you've been able to pass off the bebe. Was that what you were doing? You had a little one you were passing off, or okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
that's
for
correct.
being here today. We appreciate having you here.
So thanks to the commission for inviting some public comment from programs. I am the Confluence Environmental Center board president. My name is Adriana Lovell. Use she, her, and they pronouns. And I've been on the board since 2019. So I've really seen Confluence grow and change over the course of COVID and just, ongoing questions around federal funding and availability as budgets have just been up in the air, year to year. But in particular, right now, y'all invited us to speak on what the federal funding cuts are doing to our organization and how that's impacting us. So I just thought I'd share some of what we do. I know as a program funding recipients, you are likely aware of our organization, but we are a nonprofit based in Portland, and we serve the Portland metro region. That's Clackamas County, Washington County, and Multnomah County. And we bring in our AmeriCorps members. It's really the bread and butter of Confluence Environmental Centers, our AmeriCorps program. We bring in about 8 members each year to play a critical role in addressing environmental needs throughout this Portland metro area. And we work each of these members works with an individual partner organization to kind of tackle a pressing environmental issue within that micro community that partner works within. And so the members are situated in positions that are helping address and mitigate the impacts of things like climate change, food insecurity, restoring waterways through stream conservation and habitat restoration projects. And the partners range from housing authorities, community colleges, local public schools, uh, community development corporations, and watershed councils, so a range of nonprofit government agencies. So as we support all of our partners, we are finding that our partners are kind of equally impacted by federal funding challenges and questions. It just speaks to the long-term viability of this key structure that we have, where we're dependent on federal funding ourselves and our partners often to come together to implement our shared goals for environmental justice. And generally what we're concerned with federal funding cuts is that we'd see fewer service areas that could be reached and just limit our ability to have that ongoing impact. We are a 13 plus year organization, and we've built out partnerships, sometimes bringing a member to a partner organization each of those years. So we've built out some longstanding partnerships and have that ongoing capacity in the community. And so all of these uncertainties with federal cuts could mean changes to, our ability to bring in a member, the partner's ability to provide a partner fee, so that we could continue this kind of legacy of partnership we've had for the AmeriCorps members to be implementing and providing that added capacity to be reaching underserved community members within each of these organizations. We're also recognizing that the federal funding cuts can really strain our staff capacity. We operate on a pretty narrow budget as is, and so any changes to that really throws in some questions about external funding, how we could maintain the 2.75 FTE staff that we currently have that does a lot of work for the member support and AmeriCorps compliance, and they do great work. They do excellent work. They're really effective because they've been doing this for years. And we know a much narrower margin of staff time really would not be able to support the program in its current operations. One other thing, as a reimbursement-based program, we rely on timely federal reimbursements to operate effectively. And so any question or concern coming from a federal funding freeze means that that would severely disrupt our financial stability. It's going to delay critical funding like our payroll, and it's going to make it challenging to sustain our services and keep the organization open, given that our bread and butter is the AmeriCorps program. And so without the AmeriCorps program, it's a question of where do we go? What are we supporting? How do we continue this workforce development leadership series without that support? The other thing that the executive orders are creating a challenge around is just the time it's taking. I think I've heard this mentioned on the call already. It's been really involved to interpret what they mean. It's a lot of time and energy and really truly disappointment to feel like the environmental justice organization and mission that we've become would no longer be supported in AmeriCorps priorities, though we have a lot of interpreting to do and questions about what it ultimately means. So that interpretation time and responding to the executive orders has really pulled a lot of our precious staff time away from member supports and additionally fundraising on their non-AmeriCorps grant time to be fundraising to ensure that our operations can continue if we saw a disruption in federal funding. So it's been a really busy time for our staff, and as a board as well, probably more hands-on than we've ever been to ensure that the staff and members are being supported and communicated with effectively. The other thing I wanted to mention was that ultimately, amidst all of this, we are seeing really great interest from partners and new partners and folks who continue to want to collaborate around the environmental justice efforts throughout the Portland metro region. But there is coming into question is if we are being restricted in our ability to advance environmental justice, what does it mean for our past partners and potentially new partners to work with us on these topic issues? And that comes to play in our RFP and the job descriptions and just every single layer of our organization is where are we actually being able to come and show up as partners, and where are we being expressly prohibited from doing that within our federal funding space. And so we've done our best to kind of shield members from a lot of the uncertainty by as best as we can as reimbursements become available. And I appreciate and will mention that the recent reimbursements have been very timely, which has been really wonderful certainty amidst a lot of the unknowns to say we can continue payroll, we can continue our operations for the AmeriCorps members, but ultimately we know that we don't have a long window there, and what is Confluence ultimately fiscally responsible for if we are reimbursement based and we're paying for activities, and the question about reimbursement and if we would get reimbursed means that the fiscal responsibility would come back on the organization is a big concern. So ensuring that we have good communications and a clarity of direction and approval for the activities is been a costly process of time and uncertainty for both staff and board. So that's all I have to share today, but I want to thank you all for, I know, navigating this as well, being as timely as possible with the communications you have so that we can make the best decisions as a three-staff group and three-staff FTE group, and also a 5-person nonprofit board. We are putting a lot of our energy and heart into it, and so it's been very involved, and I see you all as equally working with a lot of dedication to help support what we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Ooh, no comments here, but thank you, both of you, for being here and sharing your experiences. We know the work you do is important, and this is really helpful in helping us to further the work of the commission, of AmeriCorps, and the board. So we appreciate you very much. Moving on along in our agenda, I hate doing that. But we do want to move into a little bit of commission discussion. And so if folks want to, if you have specific things you want to speak about as it relates to what we heard today, things that are going on. And Carrie, I see you've got something, you've got your hand raised.
I just wanted, this is my board admin role I'm playing today. I just wanted to mention that Daniel is on. And so if you
I
also
did.
wanted to let people digest or anything and like, or pivot to
Yeah.
him, we have time
And
to do that. However you all would like to do that
And
too.
I think that might be a great transition in the sense, Daniel, your experience, I don't know if you're okay to speak right now, but your experience at the Ask Leadership convening, you had some wonderful takeaways from that experience, that resonated with me. And I think it's sort of a nice, oh, it helps sort of as we come out of our public testimony today, some of what you had said about your takeaways from that convening. Are you able to speak, Daniel? You are.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I'm going from meeting to meeting today, but I'm happy to see all you all and hear about good things, bad things, everything in between. But the biggest takeaway message that I got from convening with other states across the nation who are in a similar state that we are, other commission members who were curious about what we can do in the moment is um, things such as what's happening this week, which is we're celebrating AmeriCorps Week. And so the biggest tip that we got is one way to move forward is by taking part in the narrative and sharing the great impact that AmeriCorps does on ground. And so if we uplift stories of what AmeriCorps members are doing, what these programs are doing for communities, and then elevating that to a local, state, federal level, this is the great time to do that as we humanize what's going on at the federal level with numbers, right? To them it's numbers, but if we keep uplifting stories, they'll pair it together to say we're not only getting rid of X amount of dollars, but we're getting rid of these types of programs, right? And so we know that these programs and the members serving are a pillar to our community, and so let's keep uplifting that. And I actually want to invite each commission member to take the time. I know I need to do a better job of this as a commission member, but get to know the programs that are running within your region, within your area of the state, right? Introduce yourself as a commission member, tell them you're here for support and that you can pass on the contact to the right person with our staff members, or just getting to know them so that you can uplift them in your own personal channels, etc. But the more that we stick together as AmeriCorps support, we're all in different capacities, but let's uplift those good stories, uplift the good work that individual members are doing and teams are doing. It's going to help us control the narrative, or at least take charge in the narrative, right? There's multiple things being said, lots of action, but if some of those things are positive things, then that's one of the biggest things that we can do as commission members, where we're very limited on like our admin, right? We approve grants as they come through, we approve communications or policies, but there's not so much we can do. But what we can do is stick to our communication narratives and also uplifting folks on our platform. So just wanted to give that update, and it was a great opportunity to connect with Ask and other commission members across the nation. And we're all facing similar challenges and successes, but in our own way, right? Each state is different. Um, but share photos, etc. And just where I'm open to ideas for anything else that we can support each other in doing on this endeavor.
Thank you, Daniel. Uh, Latricia, I see your hand raised.
Yes, well, thank you, Danielle, for that great report. One question I have, I know that AmeriCorps provided, I think through Carrie, some info that we could share through our social media, which I did, the overall statistics, and that was good. I'm wondering if there are ways to link to stories. I don't know if anyone's keeping those, but I think that the general data is awesome to share. But I like what you said, Daniel, about stories. I think if there are any resources for that, that might be helpful.
Thank you, Carrie. Do you have any thoughts, response to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working on getting some newly designed like leave behinds and fact sheets and things like that using some of those new statistics that I did share out with you all, but those will have a lot more of like the photos and the member testimonials and stuff. But in lieu of waiting for that to come out, I think maybe what we could do is maybe a little bit of a better job of sharing from the program Basecamp site into the commission Basecamp site, the things they're sharing with us over there, which is where they post member photos and member testimonials and different things out, their progress reports, their like day of service stuff. Just a lot of like you're talking about sort of that like that face to what's who's doing this, right? And the impact that they're having. And so I think that would be a real easy lift to kind of get some of that stuff to y'all a little bit more for sharing is just, utilize the Basecamp kind of communication pathways for that. So we'll do that. We'll put that on the to-do list to share a little bit more of that out.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Um,
Did you,
and
oh,
also we'll share out, there's actually, well, happy AmeriCorps week, y'all. Today, this week is AmeriCorps week. And there's actually a lot of toolkits and different things that come out from AmeriCorps itself. And I can share some of that. And some of it is already put together for people for like their Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatnot. And it doesn't have to only be used this week. There's some things that, are a little bit more you can use whenever you want. And so we'll make sure to highlight and put make a section for that in there too.
thank you, Carrie.
Because
Dan,
it is really important. I mean, Heidi, why did you get emotional earlier? Now you've made me emotional.
oh, I'm sorry. I
I
mean,
feel like you made me want to cry. And I'm the one that cries in like every AmeriCorps seniors video I ever see or like anything like that. So I'm sensitive and but that's the thing though, is that it really you have a response when you hear the real story and the real toll, or you get to hear about the real impacts. And I think we can do like such a better job as well for sure around making people as big a crybabies as me and Heidi.
yeah, and Daniel, I see your hand, but I want to share, Craig, you just shared AmeriCorps Connections podcast, which it's, not Oregon specific, but definitely something for us to chime into and to hear the stories and see how we can represent that through the commission work. Thank you for sharing that, Craig. Daniel, I see your hand.
Yes, something else that I wanted to bring back home from the Ask Leadership convening in Washington, D.C. was I learned that Carrie, bless your heart, is doing a lot to represent our state with Ask. And so I chatted with some of the Ask leadership, and I know we're busy, y'all, but there are committees that vary in capacity and in commitment. And this will elevate our state specific commission to a national level. That way, we're tuned in and in network with other commissions as we work together on federal initiatives. But to my understanding, there's different committees that you can join, or you can apply to the Ask board as well. But in general, what we saw was there's not so many of us from the West Coast that are represented on like the national Ask level. And so an invitation for y'all to be curious and ask Carrie about those so we can connect with Kyra or Rachel about some of those opportunities. And then it's one step at a time, right? We can start small. One of those is filling a youth commissioner position. So within your networks, if you have someone interested in serving that capacity within our service commission, that's a first great step, because on the national level, they will have a lot of support because Rachel currently has a national youth commissioner group. And so, and they get some special funding that other commission members don't do, that they can fund special projects. And so if that's a small step, that's kind of where I'm starting to look and starting to tap my networks to see if we can fill a youth commissioner role within our state commission. And then we can get them tapped into the federal level so that we can just elevate and be in community with our federal state commissions across the nation. But just an invitation, something to plant a seed in, and then start tapping your networks, because we can't do it all, right?
Yeah, and quick question, Daniel. Do you know the ages for that youth commission role on, or Carrie too, on our commission? What's the age?
I think I think this will be a Carrie answer because it kind of varies across the state, is what I realized. Like there are some states where people are freshly 18, they're going to college, they're doing AmeriCorps, and they serve on the commission. In Oregon, you can kind of do it, but then you can't kind of do it depending on if you're doing Vista, State, or NCCC. And so I would say specific to Oregon, more of a Carrie question
Okay.
about age and eligibility, like can someone be in service and not in service? But on the national level, they're kind of a little more flexible. I only graduated, and that's because I aged myself out because they want to keep you around as much as
Yeah.
possible.
I wanted you as one of our youth. Any feedback on that, Carrie?
Well, so it's so the actual statute is an individual between 16 and 25 years of age who is a participant in or supervisor of a service program for school-age youth or a campus-based or national service program. So one of the things that came up when Daniel was actually, we were first going to appoint Daniel because he fit in all of that. He was serving in Vista with Campus Compact of Oregon at the time. And we are told that, well, especially with Vista and the Hatch Act, that that was a no-go because that's seen as a political activity. So we had a lot of back and forth around that. And what we were advised by AmeriCorps Legal at the time, this is like 5 or so years ago, is we actually kind of like we're applying that across the board to all programs, no currently serving member. So then we were looking for an alumni that age. I have since heard, since this has come up, that other commissions have not had a problem with it. Having a currently serving member. So I think when I need to get, I'm gonna be getting the now that's a lot of the most of the chaos I hope is behind with executive order stuff and all that. Be able to be pulling the membership and development committee together so we can start looking at like that recruitment piece. And I think you know, we'll tackle that as we deal with it, but we do really want to get that position filled. I think that that's one too that I I from experience and from what I've heard from others, I think it can be beneficial to ensure that a youth member of a board has like some support. Whether that's they kind of get to bring a plus one, you know, adult mentor that like the program they're with or whatever that might look like, or they get assigned a mentor from our board. So I think we need to look into some of that. When we were in DC, we actually did ask the youth commissioners there like what their thoughts were, and they said it is really helpful to have someone that is sort of like also, you know, their further like person they can go to and so forth. So we should look into that, but um you know, that's just the general like structure or infrastructure around that is just, as I said, 16 to 25. And I think as we look at certain ages, you know, we'll think about like where we want to put what I want to recruit from and how we want to do it. But definitely agree with Daniel. We want to get that filled because it's like they're so great. It's so great to be able to have that perspective on the commission. And I think, you know, another place to look at too is like the youth councils at Department of Education and things like that. I mean, I think that there's a lot of like great resources to reach out to.
Sierra.
Craig is just like giving
I
me all
know.
the
Craig's on fire in the chat. Thank you, Craig. Good recommendation.
he is on
And
fire in the chat.
Sierra, you have your hand.
Yeah. So before Daniel, I was actually the youth
You.
representative and then aged out of that and then created the housing representative because we were like, what does Sierra represent? You know? So and I just wanted to say thank you to Daniel. Every word that comes out of your mouth, I just love. It's incredible. I love your perspective. Thank you for challenging us to be curious, as you said. And you sort of answered this, Daniel, but I guess this is sort of a Carrie question. But if we did have any interest in joining an ask committee, or work group or whatever their terminology is, what would that process look like in terms of like, do we have to get permission from you? Do you submit the nomination? Just what is the process for that?
I'd have to look into that. I actually did not realize that they were, you know, amenable to that. I mean, obviously they have like the Ask Board. Um, and then we want y'all to be part of States for Service and whatnot. And also don't forget to take your Policy Academy training if you haven't. But I didn't even realize until, yeah, that came up that you know, more than commission staff members could be part of some of these committees and work groups. And so I'll have to look into it just for, yeah, transparency's sake. So I obviously am part of the executive director committee, whatever they call it, community, I guess, series. And then I'm a member of the workforce development committee, the environmental was the Climate Corps, but now it's a different name, Environmental Stewardship Committee, and the State Policy Pros, which is all around state policy development, and then the National Public Policy Committee, which is kind of more the bigger group to talk about some of the more like federal, centered focused items. And then I swear it's the last one. The access work group, which had been a different like kind of DEI based one, but an accessibility based one. And so there's quite a few, and those are the ones that I'm involved in, so that I can be a part of that workforce development piece, public policy piece, state policy piece, and so forth. And I would think it would be fantastic to have people, especially involved in those main three, to have additional person. We're doing so much workforce stuff locally, and then obviously, we've been kind of knocked out of the park in the past with some of the policy stuff, so we'll keep that going. So I'll look into it, but those are the ones that I would see probably be most that are most active, and I think would be most of interest, and kind of would leverage people's time and talents is the best. So I
I
will follow
also,
up.
oh, go ahead. You follow up. Thank you.
I'll follow up on it. And also, I just wanted to mention that they did kind of, got some encouragement out to Daniel to think about applying to the Ask board, because it's been a long time since we've had West Coast, or specifically an Oregon representative on the Ask board, and they really want more commission members and commission staff. And so Nathan had joined the board, and that was really exciting, but that was a little short-lived because he moved to New York, and he had to leave us and the board, sadly. So that spot is open again, and I think altogether there's actually something like 6 slots opening. So that'd be great if we had
Yeah.
representation
Well,
again.
in that experience, I'm just thinking with Nathan, and obviously all that you're doing, Carrie, that experience filters into the commission and the work, just that knowledge and that involvement is so and powerful for us as a commission as a whole. So, thank you for sharing your experiences, Daniel, and the inspirations that have come out of those experiences. I do want to go back in our agenda I mean, we're doing commission discussion and sort of all over the place here, but I just want to go back to our invited testimony today. If there were any thoughts, questions, ideas that came out of that, other than being so very moved. We need to keep doing that in these commission meetings, as hearing from our program partners. Anyone? Yeah, June.
Well, I just think, confluence for their testimony also being in some of the environmental landscape right now with Portland Parks and Rec, but also being in the Portland metro area and in government, where I know governments across the state are having huge budget issues. And so I'm just cognitive that it's happening on the federal, state, county, and city levels, which we know is impacting really directly some of our partners, because funding is also drying up on some of those other levels as well. And sometimes they're passed through from federal, but sometimes it's not.
Mhm.
And so I just want to be I don't know how we can be supportive, because I think many of our organizations are going through this, no matter what level of the state you're at. But at least if we can collectively be together, that is somewhat helpful.
Thank you for bringing that up, June. It's layered. I mean, there's so many layers as it relates to the funding. I think the other interesting point is the interest, and Greg, you mentioned this too. The interest in membership is going up. We're not seeing fewer people wanting to participate. And so, yeah. Other thoughts, questions, Sierra?
One of the things that we had talked about at the executive committee was the idea of sending out some sort of communication to program officers and members, just communicating to them that we're aware of all of this stuff, and that we're working to support AmeriCorps in whatever that looks like. And the conversation that we had was recognizing that we don't have a lot of answers, and some answers that we do have, we can't necessarily communicate that for certain legal reasons. But I do believe in the importance of sharing with the people that we serve that we're aware that you are concerned about this and we're talking about it. We don't want you to think that we're ignoring all of this confusion and the struggles that you're all facing right now. So I just wanted to bring that up here in case we wanted to talk about that.
Thank you. Yeah, Carrie.
I still have that noted. But just to communicate some pretty basic things, I have to get a lot of approval through leadership of HEC, through the Department of Justice and the council at the governor's office right now. And I think we could hit some roadblocks then to be able to kind of do something similar to like maybe like the commission letter we did back in the day. But you know, every day is a different vibe and a different result and a different, you know, kind of approach. So I will continue to look into that. It might be that we maybe ensure if our outcomes that we want are that we're letting people know we're talking about this, that we want to hear from people, this and that, it might be the best to really make sure people are seeing our minutes, watching the board videos, getting the agendas, you know, getting the invites to attend, and you know, maybe like really making sure we're putting certain things in like our newsletter and social media in ways that we can to communicate that, and that we might have to just really rely a little bit more on that as opposed to maybe like a letter that couldn't get out illegal. Um, so that's just a thought. But I'm not saying I don't think it's possible, but these are some of the things we're sort of navigating, but I will continue to look into it because I think it's really nice. And I think it was really appreciated when the commission had done something like that in the past during a time when there were some fraught things happening externally in the world, and people were feeling very like untethered and vulnerable and wanting to hear that like people were thinking about them and how they were going through stuff. Those are just some of the challenges, but I will keep you posted, and we'll really make sure that in general though that we are making notice of what is being talked about, and what's happening is accessible and as and out there as possible.
Yeah, and I just had a quick question also. I know that they're predicting that the funding bill will get passed, but on the chance that it doesn't
Today.
and the government shuts down, that does, if I remember correctly from the last time this happened, because I was an AmeriCorps member in 2018 during the government shutdown, that does impact AmeriCorps stipend payments. Is that correct, or am I misremembering?
So
Okay.
for just yeah, for clarity on that. So right now the funds that we are all operating on are the FY24 funds. And so it's the FY25 that is obviously like up for debate and this and that. And so we've already been allocated that funding, and we can draw it down like out of the bank, you know, the system, the easiest way to call it. But it may be slow, but and delayed, but we can do that. And so for AmeriCorps State and others, that should not be an issue to be able to provide the reimbursements to the programs that are paying them. What it does mean is that we're not going to be able to call Mary up and ask her questions if she's not working, or if other staff are not available and obviously can't work, then they're not like those processes. Things they were working on, they're not going to be available to us. Things they were working on are not going to be able to, you know, continue. We can't make amendments and stuff like that. It will delay the grant making process for the upcoming year. That will all be pushed further out. But it shouldn't affect those stipends. Now, with Vista being paid directly from the federal government, they tend to get paid on a biweekly schedule. And so today is, from what I understand, I shared this. There's some in Basecamp too, if you want to read a little bit about it. But I shared originally Kyra's message on this, that they would be paid today, and then if the April 11th continuing resolution or like the new date goes through, that would, you know, be right in line with them like getting their next like thing. So it technically should, or something like that, but technically it shouldn't be a big disruption. But we'll see. But as far as state, it should be okay. The big thing that I think is going to be problematic is that we're all expecting FY25 funds to then come in. And if they don't, then obviously that would harm programs or, delay ability to like recruit members and stuff. And what if you're a returning member and this and that? So those are some of the things that could happen.
And just with reference to Mary, thank you for being here, Mary. Your time in life is, we talk about how difficult things are now. We really appreciate you and the work that you're doing too. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yeah. So thank you, Sierra, for bringing up. We thought about maybe putting a letter out to program officers and members, and then it made me think, well, to your point, Carrie, what can we do within the newsletter, the comms, and that type of thing? And I don't have any good ideas right now because it just came, newsletter came to me. But I do want I want to make the suggestion if any of us have any ideas, for, just ways in which we can communicate either through the newsletter or other comms that are already going out. So it's not extra work per se for the team, for Carrie and your team, to certainly reach out. I was like, send a message to your congressional delegates.
And I'll just say that, I mean, I've been really committed to posting updates, even when I don't have updates, our programs base camp and this and that, and just being really transparent about what's going on. And when I don't have answers or I can't say something or this or that, and definitely letting them know. There's certain things I just simply cannot discuss, even if the legal stuff wasn't going on. It's not there are items that involve advocacy or whatnot that I can't, they shouldn't come from me. But here are all the other people you can contact for that information. Contact Ask, contact Voices for Service, register as an agency, with States for Service. So we're really making sure that they are being informed and hopefully feel informed, and if not informed from us, can get it elsewhere and know where else to get that. And I think that that's a big part of this, is that not knowing is what can cause so many negative thoughts and spiraling worries and things like that. And so we're just trying to, on that end too, I just want to assure you, the commission board, that we're really focused on trying to mitigate that as much as possible and make sure people know what's going on as much as possible.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or points for discussion? Okay. Let's move ahead into just some closing items. Just a few action items that I just sort of heard. Carrie, I love the idea of if you can share between program base camp and commission base camp some of those stories or things that can help us put a name and a face and that testimony to what the experiences are, that would be great. Obviously not everything, because that would be a lot, but just, those key takeaways. So that would be one as an action item. Also looking into, and we can all sort of fish around a little bit, ways in which we can be involved in different work groups through Ask or other national, I'm at a loss for words right now. As Daniel was talking about, how can we get more involved and bring more of that back to Oregon and the West Coast? And Carrie, if you see and hear of things, like, let us know. And then be on the lookout for, I'm just going to say, additional members of the commission, but a youth commissioner would be great. But we're always looking to, bring in, if it's not right now, it's in 6 months or a year, that succession planning. I think membership is really important, and keeping that going. I'm not going to be here forever.
What?
I'm not going to be here much longer, Carrie. You keep
I just don't let any of
but
you
then
go
but then
until-
but we have so many seats to fill here. I know we have some folks that weren't able to make it today, but just, continue to think about who would be potential future members and are they interested? And maybe they're not interested now, but maybe they'll be interested 6 months to a year from now. I don't know how long it took to get Daniel. Daniel was interested, but we had to jump some hoops with Daniel to get him on the commission, I think, because he was serving, I think, when I recommended him. But just think about membership. Those are some little action items. Any other action items that we need to consider or we talked about that I missed?
I have yeah, following up on commission letter, the posting of the toolkits and the photos and stories and stuff, and following up on that committee membership piece. And then I just wanted to mention really quick too that I'll be posting some information to Basecamp around invited testimony for the HEC budget in this year's legislation. They're doing it differently this year. And so keep an eye out on that. And then I'll just segue into something I was really talking about with Dr. Latrissa earlier, but I'm really trying to use that a little bit more. And I don't know how often people check things over there or if you have your notifications turned on or off. But I just want to encourage you to turn them on so that you do know that I'm posting things there and you see that in a timely manner. And I wanted to share that what I personally do so that it's not too annoying is I actually get I actually get posts from all the Basecamp Ask and the Commission one and Program one straight to my email like as they happen. So I see them in there. But I have a rule set up so that those notifications from Basecamp go directly into a folder for Basecamp notifications. So they're not like really obnoxious in my email and I can go look at them when I need to. And so I just wanted to offer to you if you're like cringing at the idea that I just said, please like don't turn off all your notifications and don't know that I'm posting things there, that's one option, or just getting like a weekly digest or daily things like that. And then setting up some sort of rule for your folders so it's not like super annoying. But just a reminder to definitely check because that's where stuff's going.
And it shouldn't be super annoying unless you're a state employee. I mean, I get the notifications. It's not that bad. It's not that much. And it just reminds me like, yeah, I need to check that. So yeah, it's not
It
that
depends
bad.
how many you belong to. Like, yeah, some
I
of them
know,
have rural
but
base camps, so that's what happens. Exactly.
yeah,
It's
for some of you, your roles, yeah,
I
it
don't know
might
what
be.
other organizations y'all might be a part of that use the site, so it could be not very much or a lot, but
I think the
don't
notifications
shut
are
me
very
up.
helpful. Okay, so sorry, I lost our agenda for a moment. Any upcoming events or things that we need to be aware of? I don't remember seeing anything that's coming up. Or anybody of our commission have any interesting upcoming events that you want us to be aware of? No. Okay. We'll move along. Future agenda items. Do you have requests for future agenda items? Our next meeting will be April 11th. Is that correct? Tell me. I just looked at the calendar.
I'll confirm that, but what I'm just thinking, especially in light of the fact that April 20th to 26th is Volunteer Week, that maybe we want to have some like invited guests to speak about the state of volunteerism in Oregon, things like that they're seeing as volunteer managers.
That would be
Things like
great.
that. Um, that sounds good. We could have that focus.
Um, I always I always like when we're able to hear from our programs. It's always really impactful to just for them to share what they're doing today, what the challenges were, and what they're doing. But if we find that there is somebody who wasn't able to come today of the invites, Carrie, um, that we could include them or a couple of them if we have time in the agenda.
Absolutely.
Any other requests for future agenda items? Okay. That being said, our next meeting is April 8th. You will get a reminder through Basecamp. And I think we have it scheduled for the same time and similar place via Zoom. So 11 to 12:30, take the lunch hour-ish. Thank you to Carrie for all of your work through these turbulent times, and Mary for all that you're doing as well. Adriana for supporting your members and your programs, and Greg, thank you for sharing too your experience today. It's always so helpful to hear what folks are doing and experiencing. And it's exciting for me to hear that there's such an interest in membership. I think Greg and Adriana both mentioned, there's an uptick in interest, which is great because that's not always been the case. And I think it's great to, hear that, but also to know, how do we balance that with where we're at too and how we can support your programs. So, okay, folks. Oh, I'm going to say, take the time, Carrie. We're going to adjourn a little bit early, adjourn at 12:23, and we'll be back next month for more. And see you on the interwebs and Basecamp.
Thanks, everyone. Stay dry out there. It's quite the rainy day today.
Or out of the hail.
Out of the hail.
Yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
It was crazy.
Thanks so much.
Gracias. Ciao.
Ciao. Adios. Thanks, Carrie. Do you need anything from me?